Hello? Pushottam sir, are you there?
Yes, sir is there. So Devanshi, start with the introduction of
Yes.
self.
Yeah, sir. Very warm welcome you, sir. As Dr. H.R. Pushottam has superannuated on 31st August 2020 as Chairman and Managing Director, National Research Development Corporation, a central public sector undertaking under the Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, is currently serving as IPR Chair Professor at Andhra University. He has acquired over 37 years of diverse experience across the innovation value chain by working at different government institutes of repute, mostly under Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India. He was trained at Venture Capital Institute, Washington, USA on venture capital funding, National Business Incubation Association, USA on setting up of technology business incubators. He is an recipient of 15 national and international awards, including Mauritius Young Consultant Award in 1991, and many more awards. He has co-authored 65 project reports, 5 book chapters.
Hello.
Devanshi, your voice is not coming. Yeah, Devanshi. Devanshi.
I think some technical glitches are there, so.
Please continue.
Can I start, sir? Yes.
Yeah.
He was trained at Venture Capital Institute, Washington, USA on venture capital funding, National Business Incubation Association, USA on setting up technology business incubator. He is recipient of 15 national and international awards, including Mauritius Young Consultant Award in 1991 and many more awards. He has co-authored 65 project reports, 5 book chapters, 1 book published, presented 85 research papers in various journals and conferences, filed 3 patents, and helped industry in commercializing more than 350 technologies in different sectors like food, agriculture, healthcare, engineering, chemicals, IT and ITES, etc. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Devanshi, for your kind and very elaborate introduction. Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
am I
sir.
audible? Thank you, Devanshi,
yes,
for
sir,
your kind. Yeah. So, are you able to see my screen? My
yes,
screen is
sir.
visible. Yeah. So,
Yes, sir.
at the
It is
outset,
visible. Yeah.
Yeah, at the outset, I would like to thank GTU for giving this opportunity. And also, I'm very happy to see Professor Alok Dhawan and all my erstwhile colleagues from CSIR and the Ministry of Science and Technology in this conference. I compliment GTU for organizing this wonderful event, because whatever good work we have been doing, the missing link is that the outreach. So through this program, I think we are trying to maximize our outreach so that whatever R&D outcomes or whatever technologies, whatever intellectual property rights we are generating, they will be used by the industry so that we will be able to contribute for development of a self-reliant India, the Atmanirbhar Bharat. That is what the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister. So this is our duty. All of our duty is to reach out to the media, reach out to the society, reach out to the stakeholders. Whatever good work we are doing and whatever good policies of the government, we need to communicate. This is only possible by having an effective outreach program. So this concept has been very well conceived by GTU, and I thank the team, the Vice Chancellor, and all the team led by him for organizing this wonderful event. So coming to today's topic, I was asked to speak on IPA, and why IP is important, how IP is important for startups. So I wanted to share some of my random thoughts. As you all know that I have joined Andhra University as IPR chairperson of DPIIT very recently. So I have to create my own research work here to share with all of you. Probably that will happen in the time to come. But currently, I will be sharing with you some of my random thoughts on this topic, what based on my past experience. Why is not moving forward the screen? Hello, my screen is, madam.
Yeah, Devanshi, please.
Yes, sir. Yeah, sir, it is from your side. I think some technical glitches from your side.
Kindly unmute, sir. Kindly unmute.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Sir, it is sir. सर एक बार अनम्यूट, हाँ अनम्यूट कर लीजिए.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Sir, now slides
Okay,
are
are you able to see?
Sir, your slides are moving, sir. Your slides are moving.
Yes.
Not moving.
Sir, your slides are moving from.
No. Oh.
Dr. Purushottam, your slides, you're in the slide of structure of the presentation.
But to the next.
Sir, can you just email us this presentation? We can present from our side, if it is possible.
Now it's moving.
Sir, your slides are moving. Please unmute yourself, sir.
See, if you want to have more IPs, more innovations, more technologies come to the society and the market, what is the most important is that we should be able to spend substantial amount on research and development. So if you look at globally, countries like USA, China, Japan, South Korea, they all spend substantial amount on their GDP, percentage of their GDP, it's almost 2 to 4%, even 5%. But whereas in India, we are stagnated around 0.7% of our GDP. So that is probably one reason why our R&D outcomes are not that huge in terms of intellectual property rights. That is what the point I would like to communicate to is that this is one of the challenge we are all facing. We need to spend more on the R&D so that we will be able to generate more IPs, more technologies, more innovative products. And even if you see with compared to the OECD countries, we spend almost even less than half of the OECD average of 2.4%. Nevertheless, in terms of some of the major indicators, India is substantially positioned well. If you look at US Chamber International IP Index 2020, India ranked around 40 out of the 50 major economies who contribute to 90% of the GDP of the globe. As per the WIPO Global Innovation Index 2020, again, out of 131 countries, India ranks about 48. This is also not a bad thing, but still compared to the kind of potential what we have, but these numbers are needs to be further improved. So the point I would like to drive here is that investment in R&D by both private and government is key for coming out with large number of IPs and innovations, and that needs to be. Hello. Again, some problem.
Sir, you are
Hello.
please unmute yourself.
And again, I'm not,
Yes, sir.
you see, I'm not touching that, but it is going again and again.
I think,
Also
sir,
not
some
moving.
technical glitches from your side, I think so.
What should move?
Sir, if it is possible, you can share presentation with us. We can present from our side.
Yeah, sure, I will do that.
Yes.
I will come out of it.
Okay, sir.
Hello. Now it is moving. I don't know why. Sometimes it is
Yes,
taking.
your slides are moving.
Yeah. Now see, since the talk is about IP, many people might have spoken about the types of IP, but for the continuity purpose, we have two types of IP, intellectual property rights. One is the industrial property rights, under which the patents, trademarks, industrial designs, integrated circuits, and semiconductor devices, new plant variety, and farmers' rights, geographical indicators are the part of this industrial property rights. The other type of intellectual property rights are the copyrights, which includes literary works, books, music, films. Both are very important for the socio-economic development of any nation. And you all know the importance of IP because we get exclusive rights depending upon the type of intellectual property protection we get. If it is a patent, 20 years, trademarks, designs, each one has got its own criteria and eligibility criteria and the time periods. So I hope the earlier speakers might have already spoken on this, and by now most of us are aware the types of industrial property rights. And as far as startups are concerned, the patents, trademarks, industrial designs are very, very important. So let me try to explain the current scenario and what are the gaps and how we should go forward. And coming to startups, because I wanted to, there may be some freshers in this audience. I wanted to define what are the IPs, what do you mean by startup, what is the definition given by the government of India as a startup. Startup is nothing but a new company which is incorporated under the Indian Companies Act, and it should be within 10 years of its age from the date of incorporation. And it should be scalable, it should create wealth and scale up the innovation. That is the fundamental definition given by the DPAIT as a startup company. If the entity's turnover, again, another criteria is that the entity's turnover should be less than 100 crores. During this any year of the 10 years period, if you touch 100 crores turnover, you are no more a startup company. So this is the basic definition given by the government of India as a startup. India, you all know that, has emerged as the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, and we are expected to grow year on year around 12 to 15% of the startups. As of now, there are 35,000 DPIIT recognized startups in the country. I suggest all the startup companies to register in the DPIIT Startup India portal, because once you are registered, recognized, only you will get large number of benefits given by the government of India. So there are about 4 to 5 startups born every day. All startups are MSMEs, means yes, it is as long as each one has got its own definition. As long as you are within the definition, you will be a startup or you can be a MSME. And if you look at the IPR cycle, being a research organization or university, what we do is we create the IP by doing the research and development. Once you create it, we need to protect it. And depending on the type of intellectual property right, we get different periods of protection. Once you get the IP, what is required is exploitation, so that you will derive the benefits of this IP created, IP protected. So this is a typical life cycle of intellectual property right. It has got major 3 elements: creation, protection, and commercialization or exploitation. Then if you look at what are the major after the Startup India mission is launched, if you look at 35,000 startups have been registered, and if you analyze the scenario, who are all the major startups, or in what sector the startups are growing? And if you look at IT services or IT enabled services are the largest chunk of startups, because it doesn't require a huge investment, it doesn't require use space. That is the reason probably applications in almost all walks of life. That is why the IT-based startups are leading in the entire pack of things, followed by healthcare and lifestyle, education, and agriculture, food and beverages, fashion, textiles, apparel, retail, green technology, and construction and real estate. These are the major top 10 startup sectors which are going in the country. And if you look at the importance of IP in business, we all know if you have a IP protected, we all get a protection for that knowledge, over a period of time, depending upon the type of intellectual property right. That will give you a entry barrier for others. If you have that kind of a protection, and if you use that kind of a protected IPs, this brings economic growth and development, and it creates wealth and creates jobs and improves quality of life and purchasing power, and finally the GDP. Whatever products, whatever technologies, whatever services we are using today, they're all result of a R&D and intellectual property rights. Because of those innovations, intellectual property rights only, all the disruptive products, new technologies have come to the market. We all are getting the benefit of this intellectual property rights. They are being implemented by the startup companies, big companies, large companies. So business performance is also directly proportional to the IP capabilities. The companies which have got more and strong IP portfolio, those companies have been doing very well in the national and international arena. We will also see some of the examples in my subsequent presentation. IP promotes also FDI and Make in India. Government of India has been laying down a red carpet for the FDI. You all know that our FDIs are increasing year after year because of good government policies and the huge market opportunity available in the country. And when this FDI comes into the Indian market, along with the FDI, technologies also comes. Intellectual property rights also comes as a part of the deal of that FDI. For example, if you look at Maruti Suzuki, the technology of Maruti Suzuki cars manufacturing has come along with the FDI. So they are able to produce those cars in our country and sell it in the Indian market to meet the requirements. Not only meeting the Indian requirements, they're also exporting it. And also, if you look at all these major companies, MNCs, 85% of the market capitalization of these major companies are lying in their intangible assets like IP. So that is the order of the day. Earlier days, a company, if you look at it, the valuation, the assets, majority of the value used to come from the fixed assets, but now it is not. It is based on the intellectual capacity, the kind of knowledge base they have, the kind of client base they have. These are all part of a intangible asset. IP oils the economy and has a multiplier effect, as we have seen. If you have a technology, if you implement it, if you produce a product and service, how it will affect the entire economy, we have seen in the first statement. That is why it has got a multiplier effect. And in the brick and mortar economy, man, material, capital created wealth, but whereas in the knowledge economy, the ideas, innovation, IPs are the backbone of sustainable economic growth. IP and innovation are also now helping in combating the COVID-19 challenges globally. Now we are all hoping we all get vaccine soon. This is also because of the intellectual property, the innovations what these institutions have created. Then if you look at one case study I would like to present over here is how IP helped the US economy, particularly by way of through MSMEs and startups. If you look at recently a study was carried out in US in the year 2016 in 130 lakh or 130,000 startup companies. So as per their study, what they understood is, what they found out is that these 135,000 startup companies were able to create 45 million high-paid jobs. High-paid in the sense they are able to get 30% more salaries than a conventional companies or a companies who do not have a IPs in their companies. So IP means is a knowledge-based. So obviously we need a more skilled people. When you want to hire a more skilled people, you need to pay also higher salaries. That is the theory behind it. And this startup companies who have got IP have contributed to their economy about 6 trillion to their economy. That is equivalent to about 32% of their GDP has come from these kind of startups. And without trademark and brand registration, even Amazon, the largest e-marketplace in the world, doesn't sell any product. That shows how important is IP in the business. Then that is why, particularly among all the intellectual property rights, the trademark is most important for the startup companies and MSMEs. Startups, MSMEs earn 32% more in revenue compared to their counterparts who are not having IPs. This is also very important driving factor for the SME startups to adopt IP in their businesses, because they are able to earn 32% more revenue compared to the counterparts who are not having IPs in their business. So IPs are truly intellectual currency, helping to promote economic growth, company competitiveness, and innovation worldwide. That is the importance of IP. And if you look at every technology from its idea to market will pass through this curve. When you divide this curve in terms of a technology management perspective, the technology maturity level has been divided into 9 levels, technology readiness level 9. So most of the technologies which are coming from the academia, they are mostly at a proof of concept level. That is what TRL3. Many of our CSIR colleagues are familiar with this terminology. So what is required by the industry is a TRL6, but whereas most of our technologies are available at TRL3. So unless we mature these technologies from TRL3 to TRL6, industry is not interested to buy those technologies. So the gap between TRL3 and TRL6, what we call is a valley of death. Every technology has to pass through this valley of death, but technologies which have got support, endorsement from all the stakeholders, they were able to overcome or cross this valley of death successfully. Otherwise, majority of the technologies fall and die in this valley of death. See, if you analyze all our technologies developed in our country, most of them are at POC, at proof of concept level, or TRL3 level. So that is why our technology commercialization rate is very low compared to many other countries. Across the globe, it has been realized the incubation, if the technology passes through the incubation center, they get matured, they get all the support required to cross this valley of death. So that is why the incubation centers have been coming up in a huge number. Government of India has established more than 300 incubation centers during the last decade. So these incubation centers are really helping to mature these technologies, mitigate these risks, and they're able to transfer these technologies successfully. So that is what is important, is that now every university, every institute who is doing substantial research definitely should have this incubation center, because incubation centers are successful vehicles to overcome this valley of death. So what basically happens in the incubation center or the valley of death is that the product market fit has to be established. So when you are a part of this incubation center is nothing but like an incubator. A premature baby is equivalent to our technology. So when there is a baby born before the 9 months, what happens is this hospitals, doctors, they put the baby in the incubator. What the incubator does to the premature baby, it provides all the ambient conditions like temperature, the pressure, humidity, or the oxygen levels, which the baby is supposed to get in the mother's womb. The same way, these incubation centers also provide that kind of a support to all these premature technologies. So most important thing happens in this incubation centers is that the product market fit. See, whatever product you are developing, always it should be tested in the market, get the feedback, correct it, and see to that market requirement. So that is what happens in the incubation centers. That is very, very important. If without doing that, if you go to market, obviously it will fail. And also IP creation also happens in the, particularly, see, there are two types of innovations now we are talking. One is a traditional innovation, where research is being done by the research laboratory or the academic institute, and we look for an entrepreneur who buys this technology. That is a problem solution we are developing, and we are looking for a problem which can be solved by the entrepreneur. That is the traditional innovation process. But now the current trend is reverse innovation. That is what is required. If you want to take the innovation to the marketplace fast, we need to adopt the reverse innovation. What is reverse innovation? That is what startups are doing. Startups are basically adopting the reverse innovation process. That is why they're able to bring the product or solution to the market very rapid phase compared to the traditional innovation. So here what happens is that the problem and solution being addressed by the same person. But in the traditional innovation, what happens is solution is developed by one, and that we have to search for the problem, and we need to identify an entrepreneur who will match both the things. But in the reverse innovation, the problem and solution is addressed by the same person, that is the startup company. That is why they are able to be successful. They are able to bring the products to the market very fast. That is what is happening. That is what is required. Government has also realized the importance of startup companies. So if you want to promote startup companies, incubation centers are very important, because whatever the research is being done in the laboratories earlier, now that is being done in the incubation centers. The product market fit, the IP creation, the team, resilience, the business plan preparation, mentoring, and holding, bring the products to the market very fast. So why IP protection is essential for startups, because it gives you an exclusive right. It creates a barrier for others to enter into it. So that is one important thing if you have a IP. And also it improves your valuation. When you want to establish a business based on innovation, you need to raise money for establishing your company or a startup company. If you have a patented technology in your business, the people who invest in your company, they are also protected for their investments, and they will also give you a higher valuation for your company. They pump their money into your systems. So nowadays, without intellectual property, no venture capitalist, no angel investor would like to invest in your company. So that is why adopting innovation, which has got a intellectual property protected, is very, very important, because it also sometimes acts as a both defensive as well as offensive. Say, for example, tomorrow you are successful in your business, some people may come and say that you have infringed, you have copied my technology. If you have a patent, you can show it to them. I have not copied your technology. I have patented. Government of India has granted a patent to this, my knowledge, my technology. I have not copied. So that way you will be protected. That is very, very important. And IP is also must for exporting. If you look at all the advanced economies, they don't buy a product which is not protected through IP, particularly the US economy, because it gives a confidence to the buyer, user, if it is a IP protected. Considering all these things, IP is very, very, very important for startup companies to adopt. And if you look at our scenario, Indian scenario, whatever patents filed in our Indian patent office, 78 or 80% of the patents filed are from the MNCs, foreign companies. Only around 25 to 30% patents are filed by the Indian citizens. Why is so much gap in that? In India, why other countries are filing patents? Because India has got a huge market, because once you get a patent, you get exclusive rights in that jurisdiction. No one can manufacture, produce, sell that product if you have a patent in that country. So that is why all these foreign companies, MNCs, are filing patents in India. We need to enhance our patent filing. Not that research is being not done, but we are not able to capture all the research outcomes, convert them into intellectual property rights. We only publish, but foreign countries use our knowledge, publish knowledge. They come, they make products, and they bring it to or sell it to India. That is what the poor state of affairs. We should all rise to the occasion, protect all our intellectual property right. Institutions should provide the required funding to file all these patents. Otherwise, foreign countries will use our knowledge. They make products and sell into our country. One example I would like to give it over here is that the Raman spectrophotometer. Sir C.V. Raman has discovered that spectrometer analysis technique. We published the papers, but we have not protected it. But all foreign advanced economies, they make all the spectrophotometers and they send it to India. We buy them. So that is the scenario. We need to arise and see to that all our knowledge is protected and it benefits to the particularly Indian economy. And to enhance this intellectual property rights, create awareness, Government of India has also taken a lot of initiatives, like the Indian Patent Act 1970 was amended to comply with the WTO TRIPS agreement to promote innovation. We all know the impact, the kind of impact it made on the Indian economy after we comply to the TRIPS agreement. And now startups are also eligible for 80% of rebate in patent filing and 50% in trademark. To help startup companies, to help MSMEs, government is also has reduced the patent filing cost in India. And for startup companies, now government also has given a special treatment for filing patent. Earlier, we used to take 5 years, 6 years to get a patent, particularly for startups and MSMEs. They can file an application for processing the patent applications on an expeditious manner. Government also appointed 200 patent facilitators and 241 trademark facilitators who have been empaneled across the country, and whatever costs are involved for filing patent or filing trademark through these facilitators is totally borne by the Government of India. And Government of India has also brought out IPR policy 2016. I think after introducing this IPR policy, CFM has been made the agency for implementing this IPR policy. A lot of awareness has been taken place. A lot of programs are being conducted to create awareness about this IPR policy. And we could see, because of this IPR policy, there is a substantial raise, around 30% raise in filing patents from 2016 onwards. Now, states have also been ranked for their startup initiatives, startup activities, and in that rankings, IP has been chosen. IP has been given as one of the variable to measure the performance of the state startup rankings. That is the initiatives taken by the government to promote innovation and IP. And if you look at Indian landscape of startups, as I mentioned to you, India is the third largest startup ecosystem. We have this is our last year startup, 28,000 startups have been recognized. India is home for 32 unicorns. This is also a very substantial, significant achievement of India. During the last decade, there are about 32 unicorns. Unicorn means a company valued $1 billion or more is called a unicorn. In a very short period, because of all the government policies and the technological advancements, around 32 startup companies in India have become unicorns. Of course, there are another 60 unicorns which are made by Indian promoters, which are there in foreign countries like US and other places. So this startup ecosystem is emerging very rapidly, and it's a time for, I think, in my opinion, this is the best time for startups and entrepreneurship in our country in the Indian history, I would say. The current median age of a founder of an enterprise is about 31 years. At the age of 31, many people are becoming entrepreneurs. 29 states and union territories have now a startup policy. This is also a major boost for the entire entrepreneurial activity in our country. The entire startup ecosystem raised $50 billion funding during the last 4 or 5 years. Okay, many regulations have been simplified by the government. So most of them are now self-declarations. Then the boom in women entrepreneurship is witnessed very clearly, because 43% of the startup companies have been now promoted by women directors or women entrepreneurs in our country. On an average, 12 jobs are created per startup, totaling to around 3.5 lakh jobs during the last 1 year. The startup ecosystem is driving India's growth story. Okay, we all know that it is a backbone. It is emerging as a backbone for the Indian economy now. So it's all golden opportunity for the young entrepreneurs. Government of India is also now creating a competition among the states to evaluate and give the rankings. So these are all the 7 pillars of the ranking. We're calculating the ranks for giving the ranks to the state governments. They are using these 7 pillars. What are those 7 pillars? Institutional support, the kind of support the state governments are providing to the startup players. Simplifying regulations, as we talked about, now many governments have also simplified their regulations. Using public procurement, government is the largest buyer of all the services and products of the startups. So there is a need for making easy for startups to sell their products to public procurement. So a lot of transformative ideas, transformative policies have been launched. For example, earlier, if you want to participate in a tender, you should have certain criteria, like you should have this much turnover, you should have been in the business for so many years. So all those conditions have been removed for startup companies. Then incubation support. We all know that there are more than 300 incubation centers were established by the central government. Apart from that, almost every major university has opened their incubation center, acceleration centers. State governments are supporting. That is also major development. Seed funding, venture funding, outreach. These are all the 7 pillars on which the state's performance in the area of startup is being ranked and communicated. And this has created some kind of a competition between the states to perform well. So as a result, the ecosystem is thriving. I am also trying to present here the correlation between IPRs and GDP. Of course, this is not a direct, but is a surrogacy kind of a thing or a indirect way of measuring the impact of IP and the GDP. I'm trying to show it over here. The major countries like China and USA, if you look at their patent portfolio, China files every year 15 lakh patents. USA files about 7 lakh patents. And if you see their economies, China's economy is about 14 trillion, USA economy is about 21 trillion. Of course, the quality of depends on the quality of the patents. Of course, USA patents are much stronger and much broad in coverage, and they're respectable. That is why they contribute significantly. If you have more patents, what happens? More technologies, more startups. So more new products and technologies to the market means they bring a lot of wealth, revenue to those companies, revenues to the country, taxes to the country, employment opportunities to the country. So that is what I would like to say, that there is a strong correlation between IP of a country and the GDP of the country. Similarly, Japan and Germany, as I mentioned, to India, we file around 50,000 patents. Our economy is about 2.94 or about $3 trillion. So that is what the statistics show, that there is a strong correlation or relation between IPRs of a country and the GDP. And also, if you look at the patents for 100 billion GDP of some of the developed economies, particularly in the Asian region, South Korea is leading. They file around 8,600 patents per $100 billion of their economy. You look at China, around 5,800, Japan 5,200. In this region, India is the only country probably for our kind of a size and our kind of a budget. Our patent files are very, very low. There is a need for improving the patent filing. I think all of us, the policy makers, need to come out with some kind of a strategies and approaches how we can improve our patent filing numbers. This is very, very important. That is one of the indicator for measuring innovation among the countries. So we need to think and come out with some proper policies. And also, if you look at some of these major companies, like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, all these companies, their market cap has gone up or very high because of the kind of patent portfolio they are holding. Each company, they're all maybe 10 years old companies. But if you look at the valuation, for example, Apple, if you look at the Apple valuation today, market cap is about maybe more than $1 trillion, which is equal to about 8 or the entire African country's GDP. So that is the kind of impact the intellectual property right and the people, the companies who inculcating the IPR culture, they are the leaders in the technology. And I would like to finally say that IPR is a bridge between academy and industry. If you have got a strong IPRs, disruptive IPRs, which is represented by the goddess Saraswati, and if you're able to convert this knowledge using entrepreneur as a catalyst, and you can produce these products, services, and bring it to the society, they will create wealth, employment opportunities, whatever is required for the society. Only technology can give, only technology can solve all the human problems. That is nothing but your knowledge. So the knowledge, what we are representing as intellectual property right. So countries which have balanced these two forces, the knowledge of wisdom, the knowledge of wealth, and if they are able to maintain the equilibrium between these two forces, they emerged as a developed economies. The people there living with more happiness, more comforts, and that equality, access, everything is possible only if you're able to maintain this equilibrium between this goddess Saraswati and goddess Lakshmi, that is knowledge and wealth creation. So I would like to finally conclude saying that if you wanted to achieve Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant India through innovation, what needs to be done in our country is that we need for opening up more IPR cells in our academic institutions, research institutions, create awareness, capacities in universities on innovation, IPRs, incubation, entrepreneurship, and startups. This is the new emerging phenomena. We all need to embrace upon it. Then we need more R&D investment. As you all seen that we have been thinking to increase our R&D investment over 2% for the last decade or so, but we are stagnated at 0.7%. 7%. So there is a need for more participation in R&D from the private sector. In India, if you look at it, 75 to 80% of the R&D investment is coming from the government. Only 20-25% is coming from the private. But whereas in foreign countries, the situation is totally different. Exactly opposite. So implementing effectively the national IPR policy 2016 is also very, very important. Every organization has to implement this IPR policy so that the awareness is created, more IPRs are protected. Whatever IPRs we are protected, we will be able to commercialize it in India and abroad. All these things needs to be built over a period of time, and giving more weightage for IP protection and commercialization by the scientists, faculty members, their career growth. As of now, if you publish a paper or other high impact journals, you will get promotions. But where commercialization of technology, there is no weightage is given to the researchers and faculty members. I think this phenomena has to be changed. Publish instead of publish and prosper. I think we need to add one more to that: patent first, then publish, then product, and prosper. That formula needs to be evolved and implemented as suggested by Dr. Mashelkar. And there is a need to increase our IP innovation commercialization rate by bringing legislative acts like the USA Technology Transfer Commercialization Act. We don't have that kind of a legislative acts in our country where once you develop a technology, you should sincerely try for commercialization. Here in India, what is happening, once you develop a technology, that will be lying in the shelves. In a very passive way, we do it marketing. We don't showcase it, we don't sell it, we don't. There is a need for making a national directory or a national database of all the technologies developed in our country. That can be made available only if there are acts. And if you want to comply the acts, all these things will come into picture. As a result of that, the entire society will come to know what kind of technology is available to solve the problems. So the investors, the entrepreneurs can choose technologies from those databases and commercialize them. So that will lead to Atmanirbhar Bharat. What do we mean by Atmanirbhar Bharat? Atmanirbhar Bharat means self-reliance. We should not buy anything from outside as much as possible. Right now, what is happening, around 24 to 25% of our GDP, which is equivalent to maybe around 0.7 or 0.7 trillion US dollars, we are importing. If you want to minimize that imports, we want to enhance our exports, it is only possible through research, development, intellectual property right, innovation, commercialization of indigenous technologies. So this is such a sensitive and such an important area. All of us need to passionately pursue it, push it, so that the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision to make India Atmanirbhar Bharat self-reliant can be achieved at least in the next 10 years' time. I thank you all for your patient hearing and giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing a wonderful knowledge with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Devanshi. If you have any specific questions, I have to go for another meeting. If you have any questions, I will be very happy to answer, or later you can.
Okay, participants, if anyone of having any questions, they can drop their questions in chat box. I think, sir, no one have any questions. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I would also like to compliment the Gujarat government, the Gujarat ecosystem, because you are again ranked as #1 and you are able to retain your leadership position in the startup ecosystem because of all the good work you all doing there.
Thank you very much, sir, for the compliment.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir,
Yeah, tell me.
sir, someone of the having one question, that role of institutional industry links for startups.
Repeat.
Role of institutional industry link for startups. Any link of institutional industries for startups?
Yeah, it's very, very important. You see, the industry and academia should pose problems. That is what it is missing in our country. Also, the corporatization of startups. Now all these developed economies, what they do is they pose the problems. These are the problems our company is facing. So once that problem is posed like that, they pose the problems to startup companies. Startup companies, in turn, with academia, develop solutions for that. That is what is happening in all these advanced economies, China and other countries. So that kind of a culture is not there in our country. I think few corporates have started that, but that needs to be scaled up so that the triple helix relationship is built, between the government, industry, and academia. Countries which are able to manage this triple helix very effectively, again, they were leaders in the innovation. So that we are very weak and we need to build that. For that to happen, the industry has to come forward. They should pose the problems, the grand challenges, the practical problems, and the governments have to pose the challenges so that the startups can make use of the academia to solve the problems and give back to the solution fast. Okay?
Okay, thank you so much, sir. It's been pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kannan sir. Nice to see you. Namaskar, namaskar.
Now I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Kannan Srinivasan, sir. As he is Director CSIR, Central Salt and Marine Chemical Research Institute, Bhavnagar. He is author of 80 plus research publications, over 2,600 citations with H index of 32, review a book on catalysis and entitled Catalysis and Surfaces, characterization techniques, several book chapters, and primary inventor of 8 original patents, which includes 3 granted US patents along with the family of patents in 11 other countries like EU, China, CA. He is awarded by CSIR Young Scientist Award and INSA Medal for Young Scientists in 1998, GSPS INSA Research Fellow in 2003 and 4. He is also a member of Frontiers in Environmental Chemistry and also a member of Royal Society of Chemistry and also a member of American Chemical Society. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Devanshi. Is my slides are visible?
Yes, your slides are visible.
And I'm audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I think it is suddenly rescheduled. Okay, I have planned my talk for 45 minutes, but I mean, it is a kind of a lunchtime, and I don't want to put many of the viewers into what do you call a kind of a late lunch. I'll try to finish it as fast as possible. Though I have planned my talk for 45 minutes, I'll try to restrict myself to around 30-35 minutes. First of all, I mean, Professor Naveen Sheth, Professor Chaitanya Joshi, Dr. Prashant, and my colleagues, both past and present, from the DSIR family, Dr. Alok, Dr. Purushottam, Dr. Pankaj, and Dr. Mitab, and all the invitees for this outreach programs and faculties of Gujarat Technological University and the students. I failed to see the participation of the students actively in this outreach program. I don't know for what reasons, because these kind of an outreach programs are largely meant, even Dr. Purushottam lecture, it is largely meant for students who wants to become startups, or students who wants to become researchers, students who wants to become entrepreneurs. These outreach programs basically helps them to take the guided way of taking it further. And it is all being done as a part of India International Science Festival 2020. And I'm sure that the introductory remarks of my previous speakers, both by Professor Joshi and by Professor Sheth, very clearly mentioned about the role of science and its implications in the lives of the people, and how it is basically intricately linked between what science is being done in the four walls of the labs, and how it basically influences on the larger forte of the mankind. And this is through this festival we reinvigorate that concept, and hopefully we see India where, I mean, science is also a part of what you call culture and system in place, so that these festivals are intricately linked with the human beings. I mean, that is the wish that I wish to pursue in the years or decades to come. With this introduction, I was asking Amit for what kind of a topic that I should give, and what kind of an audience would be there, because that's more important. Depending on the audience, depending on the what do you call expectations of the audience, the way that we basically connect to the people will be better. And he was telling me it's more of a large number of students and faculties of GTU, and maybe from the entire Gujarat on the whole. So I have configured my talk, and he was telling me to give some information about our institute, the only CSIR institute in the state of Gujarat, Central Salt and Marine Chemicals Research Institute. So he said, I mean, this could be a fourth of your lecture presentation is. So I was basically thinking, I mean, I don't want to give only the institute talk. I wanted to give a kind of a concept around the institute. So I was critically analyzing the institute's recent performances, and when we were seeing it, there are certain examples which very clearly came out. The one of the major agenda of importance of partnerships. So I just thought, I mean, I'll give you through stories, because it's very easy to reach rather than talking about abstract terms, which is good for a reasonably well-read audience, or what do you call versed audience, where the audience is not that well-versed or what do you call read. The stories basically reaches and impact better, and that's the way by which I thought of taking it further. I'll be telling about 3 stories which are the recent examples of this institute, and wanted to emphasize how the partnerships plays a very critical role in science building. And I also reiterate what Professor Sheth and Professor Joshi mentioned, and Professor Dr. Prakash mentioned in his opening remarks. This Science India Fest is something which is meant for largely for the science enthusiasts, especially for the students, teachers, faculties, entrepreneurs, startups, all those kind of people who are believing science is which is a kind of an undoubted concept, at least to my mind, about how science is influencing it. So I request all the participants, please convey this message to your friends, neighbors, peers, all of them, to register this event at www.scienceindiafest.org. And where, I mean, there are, as Dr. Prashant said, there are 41 events, and you can participate in any one of the events, which, I mean, he has talked about in 9 verticals. You can, participate in any one of the events to make it a kind of a successful. We embrace, I mean, in fact, 100,000 people because of the net issues, I would expect virtual would require a kind of a larger participation than physical. If it is conducted in a particular city, all of us cannot basically go to that city and then do it. But if it is conducted virtual, one can sit at the comfortable of home or a office or a park where you can basically participate in the science festival. So with this brief introduction and request for participation in this active participation in this science festival, let me just give a kind of I structured my talk with a kind of 4 issues. One is about briefly introducing about what the institute is all about, because it is important. There are many students, many faculties coming from different parts of the world. In fact, I mean, we shared some of these links to some of the other colleagues also. I just give a kind of a brief introduction about the institute, and then I'll take you through those 3 stories, which basically emphasize on the partnerships. And as I said, I mean, CSIR is the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, an autonomous body under the Ministry of Science and Technology, under the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, where we have around 38 national labs spread across the country. And the Central Salt and Marine Chemical Research Institute is the only institute in the state of Bhavnagar which exclusively work on different kinds of chemistries, which are niche for this nation. And we do have a kind of a field station, which is called as Marine Algal Research Station. It is located in the southern coast of India, located close to Rameshwaram, a place called Mandapam, where I mean a unique activity is being carried out, which is kind of a niche for this country on the whole. And to give a kind of an history, this was inaugurated by the first Prime Minister of this country in 1954. It's roughly, I mean, close to around 70 years. And this institute is then started for the Atmanirbhar Tha, because when we partitioned ourselves with Pakistan, we were not having enough salt to feed our Indian population. And this institute was born with a kind of a self-reliance of salt availability and salt productivity in this country. And with this institute born, and with the R&D that is developed in the formative years of this institute, India becomes self-reliant in 2 decades. And I'm very happy to say at this point of time, India is the 3rd largest producer of salt next to China and United States. And we have an ambition of becoming a kind of a 2nd largest producing country in the next few years to come. And this is the kind of transformation that we have seen, where a country which was not enough to produce to feed the Indian population, our own fellow countrymen, has now become a kind of a largest salt producing nation in the world, and feeding several other countries through exports. And if I were to talk about what are the current research that we are doing, and if you really see, I mean, these are the 2 broad areas that we work. We work on chemical research and biological research, and largely under the chemistry foot, our core domain is on the salt and marine chemicals. We also work on algology-based chemicals, that is both marine microalgae and marine macroalgae. Everything will be around sea. And then we also have a kind of a very niche area of catalysis driven chemicals, which involves green chemistry principles. And we also work on polymers and membrane based chemicals. We work on inorganic materials. This is the only laboratory in the country where inorganic chemistry is practiced to a very large extent. Salt, marine chemicals, inorganic materials, all these are all kind of a forte for this particular institute, and also a kind of inorganic organometallic chemicals for different kinds of sensing and diagnostics applications. And as far as the biological research are concerned, we work on, as I said, on marine microalgae and macroalgae. We also work on halotolerant plants, and we use high-end biology and biotechnology for understanding the how these plans behave and how the behavior of the plans can be basically put into kind of a valorization. As Dr. Purushottam said, the research needs to be translated into a kind of a value, and the value can be in terms of a revenue, or the value can be in terms of a benefit to the mankind. And these are some of the ways like marine microbes, bioactives, or marine ecology, or something which we are basically working intensely for different objectives in the fort of industry and societal needs. And we have roughly around 80 scientists and roughly around 200 students were working on these domains, and which is well equipped with the different infrastructural facilities. The most important point I wanted to emphasize it is this institute is a more of a technology-centric organization, where whatever we do, we develop a kind of a technologies around that our research, and that technology either is put into a kind of a benefit of the society, in the welfare of the society directly, or in terms of supporting the industry needs in terms of higher business opportunities or higher revenue generation, largely in the fort of certain marine chemicals, inorganic and organic chemicals, polymers and membranes, waste to wealth, and in other greener technologies. Then the most important point that I wanted to say about here is all these technologies are all IP protected, which clearly says that the previous speaker very clearly mentioned about how IP should be correlated with the prosperity of the nations. Okay, there are examples he went through about how IP's prosperities, economy, and growth, innovation index, all these things are all interlinked parameters, and the technologies that we develop are all always augmented by a kind of patents, and our organization, our institute is one of the front runners in the nation level on the number of IPs generated on a per capita scientist basis. And this is also backed by very strong research publications. So we work on a kind of technology which is backed by a IP, which is further understood very critically for with intense research, which basically goes the loop of a cycle for developing a kind of a better technologies. And in fact, the impact which is defined by certain parameters, the institute ranks probably one of the top institutions in the country on the whole. And we do a lot of human resource at different levels for undergraduates in terms of internships programs, for masters in terms of projects or internship programs, and for doctoral and postdoctoral studies for taking up a kind of a high-end research which is of relevance and meaning to the society and industry. And we also undertake several kinds of skilling programs, which essentially makes this startups, entrepreneurs to skill themselves to equip themselves before they enter into a kind of area. And we do several training programs and outreach also for different kinds of an outreach, right from the schools to kind of companies. We do several kinds of an outreach programs. And today that we are talking about is another kind of an outreach, where we are talking about how the India International Science Festival connects all of us through this outreach program to make some sort of a sense and some sort of a belonging in the forte of science and technology. And these are the larger domain that we broad domain that we do. We are a knowledge intense organization coupled with a kind of an intellectual strengths, and which provides different kinds of services, but in partnership. So my today's lecture would be on the partnership. I would be talking about it. So I don't want to tell about partnership. Here, I'm talking about partnership in terms of a science. The stories that I'm going to talk about will essentially tells you how the partnership makes the synergy, where we wanted to advocate a philosophy. Synergy means 1 + 1 should always be greater than 2. Okay, it's not mathematical. It is something which is beyond mathematics. So this is the story that I just wanted to tell, which is basically on a public-private public-public partnership. What is this? I'll run you through the stories, and I'm sure that because of the diverse audience, don't get into two criticalities. You have to understand the message around it. Fine chemicals are a fabric of all our necessities. Whether you touch your toothpaste, whether you touch your soaps, whether you touch your perfumes, whether you touch your deos, okay, fine chemicals plays a very critical, or whether you touch your agrochemicals, whether you touch your pharmaceuticals, all these things are all largely a kind of a fine chemicals. And most of the chemicals, 90% of the chemicals that are produced in this world are somewhere or other are driven by catalysts. A catalyst is the one which basically drives the reaction in a kind of a reactant R to a product P in a faster time without itself basically being consumed in the reaction. It only accelerates this rate at which the process of R to P is happening. And fine chemicals are not exceptions. There are several kinds of fine chemicals. Almost, I would say here, more than 99% of the fine chemicals which are produced in this country or produced in the whole world, or somewhere or other, the catalysts play a role of their making. And the catalysts, if you really see, there are several catalysts are used. Broadly, they can be classified as a homogeneous catalyst and heterogeneous catalyst. And there are several kinds of reactions are involved. For a chemistry audience, they will be knowing about the terminology like hydrogenation, oxidation, isomerization, esterification. For a non-chemistry audience, these are the words that must have been learned in the school levels. Don't get into those memories, but what you have to see is there are some chemical reactions which takes R into P, and one of that chemical reaction is hydroformylation reaction, which is very, very important for making different kinds of NOxO products, which we are every day using it. The only beauty of chemistry is we use chemistry right from the whenever we wake up till our go to bed. Chemistry is inflicting on the fabric of our lives. And several kinds of chemicals using hydroformylation reaction, which is a kind of a reaction where two molecules, carbon monoxide and hydrogen, is added to a olefin to get a kind of a different aldehydes and different other kind of an oxo compounds. And this is a very interesting reaction where, I mean, a kind of an homologous series. If you are starting with a kind of a carbon number N, it goes into a kind of an N+1 kind of a compound with a kind of a functionality built into it. So there are two important things that are happening. One is and the carbon number is basically increased. At the same time, I mean, you also introduce a functionality, because the functionality offers chemistries to be taken up, and that chemistry leads to the kind of a different products which we use on our everyday lives. These are different uses of oxo compounds that I've talked about, aldehydes. And the beauty is the chemistry and the catalysis always have a kind of an evolution. Okay, we start with a kind of A, and we are not happy, I mean, with the A, and then goes to B and goes to C, and that's how the research basically progresses. And hydroformylation is no exception. And there are certain catalysts were tried as a kind of a first generation catalyst, and which are based on cobalt. Okay, and the activity, as I said, I mean, the reactivity, how many molecules are basically converted on a given time on a given set of active sites. This is something which is a kind of a driving force for the discovery of a newer catalyst, and we enter into a kind of a third generation of catalyst. I believe my presentation is. Somebody is basically sharing their presentation. I request, I mean, not to share while somebody is presenting it. Okay. So the next when we are discussing about these generations of catalysts. Why do we need to go for a generation of catalyst? Because we wanted to get it in a kind of a faster time with a kind of a lesser amount of sites, with a kind of a very high activity, which means if I'm taking 100 molecules of A, it should basically get converted to 100 molecules of B. But while forming B, which is the active entity, you may end up in a kind of a molecule C, D, E, F and all. We don't want those C, D, E, F to be there, and that we call it as a kind of a parameter called selectivity, and we wanted B to be formed exclusively. And these are the critical things for any kind of a catalyzed reactions. And the best part of it is this institute was also working on this kind of a hydroformylation reaction, worked on different sets of catalysts, and worked with the different kinds of olefinic molecules and different functional molecules in creating a kind of different aldehydes. And here, I mean, if you really see a CHO, which is a kind of an aldehyde functionality, which is attached at the terminal end, and one it is attached at the branched end. And you really need a kind of the terminal and aldehydes to be more produced for certain applications. It gives you a kind of a larger opportunity for making more diverse molecules. How do you selectively get that particular aldehyde without having any other kind of other compounds or even the isoaldehydes to be produced? It's a great challenge that everybody is working on it. And this is exactly the challenge where one of the companies which everyone knows, Bharat Petroleum, has been working on it, and they were interested in a kind of a particular hydroformylation reaction for making a kind of a diverse kind of a molecules. And this is, I mean, again, a kind of a multi-billion-dollar industry. This hydroformylation reaction alone, if I were to basically talk about in terms of our revenue, and there are certain challenges. Okay, challenges is when we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, most of these catalysts are generally imported, in the sense that we may be having a kind of a technological expertise, but the critical components which are needed for conversions are largely imported. And Bharat Petroleum, they said, why not we basically indigenously design this catalyst? And they had their own R&D divisions, which is working on this particular forte. And they said, let's not work alone in isolation, because the transformation of isolation working in silos is not going to be a kind of a logical or a time-bound way of doing things. So let's work with a kind of an organization which are having a kind of an expertise on this. And this way they have collaborated with our institute. They partnered with us. They said, we wanted to design and develop this catalyst, which could basically make a kind of a self-reliance in the years to come. They had a kind of a time window of 5 years. And then they said, within 5 years, we wanted to basically move away from imported catalyst to a kind of an Atmanirbhar catalyst. And they told us what are the challenges we need to overcome and what kind of a parameters that we need to achieve, which is of this thing. And this slide, I don't want to get into the details. This slide essentially speaks only one message, that this chemistry is important. The products that are going to be used is going to be made, is going to basically influence the health and well-being of our Indian population and beyond that. And that's the whole message of that slide. And we entered into this kind of reactions, and we started working on this reaction for the last 1.5 years to 1.5 years. The objectives were very clear. We have to basically compete with the imported catalyst. And we wanted to have a kind of a work, to have a kind of a realization. And this, the engineering expertise of the Bharat Petroleum is pretty high. The chemistry expertise of the institute is pretty good. And they said, let's combine the engineering expertise and the chemistry expertise together in a collaborative mode, design and develop the catalyst. The testing would be done at both the ends, and then scale it up, and a translation would be done, and a kind of bigger realization before we actually replace the catalyst which is commercially working by the catalysts that are indigenously developed. And that's the beauty. And the outcome of the collaboration is, the beauty is the institute has identified a particular set of a catalyst which is having a kind of a very high activity, and whatever the lab scale demonstration that needs to be done has been done. Now the scale up work will be done at a kind of a Bharat Petroleum, which would basically put the engineering expertise to put a kind of a semi-continuous commercial semi-pilot scale. And once they get a kind of, in the next one and a half years, if they get into a kind of what do you call these catalysts which are developed in the labs are put into a kind of a semi-commercial validation, this would be basically replaced in the next 3 years down the line. And the time frame that we have been given is 3 years down the line. And this is a classic example where, I mean, the chemistry part of the organization is working along with the engineering expertise of another organization to make a kind of a larger dream of self-reliance in a domain which is a kind of having a kind of both revenue as well as the well-being of the nation on the whole. And of course, all these things, these joint research are always a kind of where, I mean, the IPs and knowledge capitals are always shared. And the second example, that is basically, the first example is a public-public partnership, where ours is a public-funded organization, and BPCL is also kind of a public sector organization. That is an example where how the partnership has culminating into a kind of a Atmanirbhar Reliance. The second example that I wanted to get through is about public-private partnership. And this particular public-private partnership, I'm going to run through a kind of a story, which is on a kind of a agro-derived chemistry with a kind of an engineering expertise. So there is a kind of an agriculture, there's a kind of a chemistry, and there's a kind of an engineering. All three segments are basically what you call camouflaged on this example. And I mean, if you really, I mean, go to any kind of sugarcane producers, and then the sugar mills are basically what you call processing the sugar canes, and they produce sugars, and they end up in a kind of a molasses which goes into the distilleries, and these distilleries are largely producing alcohols for different use. The most important thing is when you are producing alcohol, you end up in a kind of an effluent which is called as spent fortune. It's a kind of a menace. Okay, when you end up in when we are advocating about green chemistry principles, we wanted to have a kind of a no discharge or a kind of a zero waste processes. These are the buzzwords in the chemistries and in the economy, or in the way the what do you call industries would like to work with. And this is a classic example. And the beauty of it is the one which is a notorious and obnoxious thing, which is actually the spent force. And what do we do with that kind of a spent force to make it a kind of a valuable proposition at this point of time? And there has been a kind of a tremendous amount of what do you call concerns which are expressed about the pollution related what do you call effects of these spent force, which clearly tells that I mean, there is a kind of a need to what do you call do something to do with that to make it a kind of a green and eco-friendly process. There are some what do you call at this point of time, there are a couple of what do you call options are available to treat that, and they are more of a kind of a getting rid of the problem, not to basically make a kind of a solution out of a problem. And this is I mean, a kind of a growth profile. I mean, India is probably, I mean, it is the second largest producing country in the world, sugarcane producing country in the world. And this is going to continue, okay, considering the kind of vision that we wanted to basically blend ethanol into our fuels. Where, I mean, the percentages is on the continuous rise. Ethanol production in this country and sugarcane cultivation is going to go up in the years and decades to come. So the molasses are going to come, and the spent force is going to be generated. How do we basically deal with it? Is something which is very important. The spent force management, what do you call, makes a kind of a key. And if you really see, these are the protocols that are basically adopted. I don't want to get into the technical details of it. What is the message that I wanted to what do you call convey in this slide is this particular work is kind of a work where we are not basically wanted to get rid of the problem. We wanted to basically engage on the problem and then see whether what kind of a solution that can be basically given on this problem. And that's the beauty that we went into it. And this is the India sugarcane map. And this is the kind of a numbers that you can see that we produce a kind of a roughly around 30 to 35 billion liters of spent force. That's not a small number. That's really not a small number. And this one, handling this kind of a large numbers requires a kind of a technology which are scalable, sustainable, deployable, and at the same time, it is more cost effective as well. And these are the advantages of this. would make a kind of a tremendous impact in terms of agriculture, in terms of a soil health, in terms of water, in terms of groundwater, what you call safety, or in terms of what you call the ecosystems, like for example the riverine ecosystems. So it makes a kind of a tremendous amount of contribution in different sectors. One of the beauty of this, what do you call this thing, spent wash is it has some amount of potassium in it. And that amount of potassium is very similar to the amount of potassium that is present in sea bittern. What is sea bittern? Sea bittern is when you basically cultivate salt, the residual matter that is basically coming out is a sea bittern. And sea bittern is a rich source of potassium, and that potassium can be basically extracted out for potassium resources. And the beauty is the percentage of potassium that is present in the sea bittern and this one is almost similar. That's number one. And number two, this institute has developed technologies for extracting potassium from sea bittern and from several other potassic sources. So there's a kind of a competency that this institute had got, and that is so we worked on the what do you call spent wash also as a kind of one of the resources of creating a kind of a potassium and see whether we can make a potassium in this country. Why do we need potassium? We need potassium because everyone knows that potassic fertilizers are extremely important for several what do you call crops in this nation. And in fact, I mean, I don't think any agricultural field in this country is not using potassium. So potassium is kind of an omnipresent fertilizer for the entire Indian what do you call agricultural backbone. The worst news, I mean, which is a kind of unfortunate news, I would say, is unfortunately the entire potassium that is used by our Indian farmers at this point of time is completely imported. Not even a gram of potassium is produced in this country. And this is something which is a very, very, though efforts have been done, and unfortunately still it is not percolated the potassium production in a kind of a scale that would make at least even 5% or 10% of the Indian farmers are using indigenous potassium. So this is a kind of what do you call a pain point that we had. It is needed. Okay, it is present. And it is what do you call completely a kind of an imported, okay, where Atmanirbharta is at this point of time is virtually close to nil. And what do we do on this? So we said, I mean, let's develop a kind of a process to extract out the potassium from this. And the beauty of it is what do you call we developed this particular process in a kind of a flask in our labs. And there's what do you call a company called as Chem Process Systems, which is located in Ahmedabad. They were working on this problem and they were not finding a good way of extracting the potassium out. They were literally what do you call before they met us in 2016 over a cup of tea. They were not knowing that this institute has been addressing the work of spent wash management. They were working on the spent wash management. And then they were also knowing about it. There is a potassium present in it, but they could not, what do you call, have a kind of a solution of extracting it out of the potassium. So when we were telling about it, that we were working on this and we were basically what do you call extracting out the potassium in it. So they said, why don't we join our hands and then what do you call take it further on this. The best part of it is they said, okay, I mean, we will basically what do you call put up a kind of a pilot plant for the technology which is just demonstrated in a 1 liter flask in the lab, just demonstrated in a 1 liter flask. Okay, they said, I mean, why don't we basically take it up to a kind of a 2,500 liter pilot plant and then see whether it is what do you call translatable, what kind of what do you call things would challenges that we would be getting it when we are actually working with a kind of a spent wash. So we tied up with, I mean, both these organizations tied up with a distillery. And then, I mean, the distillery spent wash basically was taken up and then the technology was adopted. The beauty of it is when the technology was adopted, several newer, what do you call, concepts emerged. And then they said, what do we do with the kind of an organics that is present in the spent wash? And how do we basically separate it? In what way we have to basically separate them? What kind of a chemistry that needs to be done? And how the biology has to be separated from the chemistry? What kind of what would be the kind of benefits from it in the overall what do you call scenario? And all these things were basically discussed while what do you call discussed and worked upon while pilot plant facility were checked up. And then, I mean, we said, I mean, let's collaborate with still better more organization, like the organics that are coming out. Can we basically use them in place of molasses as a kind of a cattle feed supplement? Okay, where I mean, it can be used as a kind of a binder for cattle feed. So that requires a kind of a validation from other institutions, like what you call agrocentric institutions, which are responsible for what you call milk, like NDRA or Sabar Dairy or NDDB kind of an organization, and a dairy related organization. And that's how we basically collaborated with all these institutions to come up with a kind of a model, which is making a kind of a income for the distilleries also very high, and also for the and also all the stakeholders, the farmers, the distilleries, the cooperatives, and of course the government. Everybody was a kind of a business win-win kind of a model. And these are the certificates which basically told that, I mean, the organics that are basically we call it as spent for vinasse. Desalted vinasse, depotashed vinasse, and this particular was used in a kind of this thing, and proved that it is equally doing a kind of a very good health on the cows and buffaloes, and at the same time, I mean, the milk product was also having a kind of a good quality, and this could be a kind of a very good substitute for the molasses. So the technology is basically now creating a kind of a solution where potassium can be basically separated out, and that could go into a kind of an agricultural field for the benefit of the farmers, and the organics can go into a kind of a dairy segment. And the most important thing is, sugarcane being distilleries being a kind of a water intensive industry, the water that is basically coming out from this separated constituents is now pulled back into a kind of the loop itself, which is basically making a kind of a complete circular economy in terms of its this thing. And the entire stakeholders have witness about this technology, and this technology is now getting validated at a kind of a highest offices of this country. And I'm sure that very soon that this technology would be adopted by several tens of distilleries. There are around 300 distilleries. Our dream is that in the next 3 years, at least 25 to 30 distilleries of this country should be adopting this technology. And in 2019, there were two technologies. Honorable Prime Minister has given a kind of a press message, which is a kind of a appreciative message for two technologies developed in this nation. And this is one of the technologies which won even the technology award from the hands of the Honorable President of this country as well. And the best part of it is, I don't want to, because of the time, I don't want to get into it. And the best part of it is, a commercial plant is running and operational in Maharashtra, which is operating at a 60,000 liters per day kind of a capacity. Just imagine, from a 1 liter flask to a 2.5 KL in a pilot, now we are basically talking about a 60 KL PD kind of a scale. And we wanted at least several thousand KL PDs are adopting these technologies in the years to come. And this is a classic example, because the private equity guy who came and then invested money on the technology, just believing what we have done it in the lab for a couple of hours, and then invested money, and then now he was basically taking it into a kind of several stakeholders and several line ministries for making this technology applicable for the distilleries of this nation. This would not have been possible if either we worked in a kind of a silos, or they worked in a kind of a silos, whether they were working in a kind of a separation of potassium, or we were working in a kind of a complete integration of engineering, right from a 1 liter flask to 60,000 liters per day. I mean, this journey would not have been possible had it not been a kind of a public-private partnership is in place. And I clearly say this is a classic example where, I mean, as Dr. Purushottam said, industry needs to invest on the R&D with the interact with the R&D institution. And this is one of the classic example within a span of 4 years down the line. It doesn't take some decades. It took only 4 years, from 2016 over a cup of chai, And then the commercial plant was operational in 2019 February. Within 3 years, the commercial plant is up and running. And that's the kind of a spirit with which public-private partnership can enable the science discoveries into a kind of a application which would benefit a large section of stakeholders. The last story that I wanted to basically talk about is it's a public-private partnership. So what is this story is all about? This story is, as I introduced you in the initially, I'm just 5 minutes more. Okay, I'm running late. Okay, so this is about marine macroalgae, which I discussed about you in my initial remarks. These are commonly called as seaweeds, which are basically grows in sea. And the beauty of it is that these seaweeds doesn't require any kind of a fertilizer. It takes nutrients from the sea and it grows, and its growth rate is phenomenal compared to even land-based plants. And it is a kind of a centric activity where women empowerment is very, very high. And this particular seaweeds, when you when you crush these seaweeds, you end up in a kind of a sap, a liquid, which is called as, we call it as a sap. And this sap is having a kind of a tremendous amount of micronutrients and plant growth promoters present in them. And that is basically helpful for the plant growth. So instead, by adding the fertilizer, along with the fertilizer, if you add these biostimulants also, okay, the seaweed-based sap, the productivity of the crops increases from 12% to 37% of the yield per hectare of the crop. Any kind of a crop, depending on the nature of the crop, depending on the nature of the soil, the productivity value will change. And that is really a kind of an additional income for the farmers. And the best part of it is one of the entrepreneurs who is no longer now entrepreneur, who is now basically going to cross a kind of a 100 crore club, which what Purushottam said, if one guy crosses any one of the last preceding 10 years, 100 crore club is basically goes up. He is no longer considered as a kind of a startup. And this company will be now crossing a 100 crore club. And they tied up with a kind of another company called as IFCO. And they are marketing this product, which is being used by several hundreds of farmers in this country. And this is a kind of a field trial where the collaboration came in, where the public-public collaboration came in. See, this particular sap that is basically developed from the seaweed needs to be validated on the field. How do we basically connect to the fields? So we have to work with the kind of agricultural institutions and universities. This institute worked along with agricultural institutions and universities. Were 41 agricultural institutes and universities in the country over across 20 different states. Okay, on more than around 35 different of crops, and where the crop acreage was not less than an acre, where the testing and validation was done. And that's the kind of a scale of experiments where, an individual institution cannot do. It requires a tremendous amount of collaboration and cooperation. And that's the way, after 3 years of work with several thousand hours, man days of efforts of several, agricultural scientists and farmers, the results were validated, and it was proven that this particular sap, which is developed from the seaweeds, has a kind of a capability to increase the productivity of the crops significantly. And that is the whole important message I wanted to convey across. The most important point is, how does it in fact influence? I said, the first example was on revenue generation. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, the hydroformylation reaction. And this is basically converting into a kind of a socio-economy. This thing. You just imagine several thousands of fishermen are involved in the cultivation of the seaweeds. They are getting empowered. They're getting a kind of an additional income by the cultivation of these seaweeds. So when they get engaged in the cultivation of seaweeds, and the industries are going to basically be the buyer of these seaweeds, and they produce for sap out of it. And this sap is going to be given to the agricultural farmers who are going to basically use it, and then through that, you get a kind of an additional revenue for the farmers. In fact, there is a kind of an estimate although we don't have a kind of what do you call it, direct evidence, an estimate, the last 3-4 years of use of these seaweed biostimulants produced in this used in this country has given a kind of an additional revenue of over couple of thousand crores of additional farmers' income. And that's the kind of an impact that we can basically draw into, a kind of a women empowerment to the agriculture through the science and technology intervention that would only happen through kind of a collaboration. So that's the beauty of it. And we did not, stop there. We extended even to the, animal segment, both for the lactating cows or calves or broiler chicken or any kind of poultry. Okay, I mean, where the addition of the seaweeds, and some of you might have seen this newspaper cutting got published in Times of India, I think last month, where, I mean, this again was a kind of a collaboration from 3, institutions, namely IVRI, Indian Veterinary Research Institution, Central Avian Research Institute, National Dairy Research Institute, along with Dr. Alok Dhawan's lab of Indian Institute of Toxicological Research. All these institutes worked in kind of a collaboration, and then we demonstrated the use of biostimulants indeed helped on the the growth of these lactating cows, or in the milk productivity, or in the eggs, or the egg laying time advantage. All those things have been demonstrated, and I'm very happy to say that this technology is also being licensed to Mrs. Aquagri Delhi, and they will be basically soon marketing this product in next 6 months to a year timeline. And this product would now basically create a kind of a huge impact in the veterinary sector as well, the way that it has demonstrated in the plant sector. And as I said, I mean, all this research work in terms of intellectual property generation, because all these works are protected by intellectual property, backed by a kind of a very high fundamental science that benefits both the society and the industry at large. And that's the reason, I mean, I'm very happy to say that 2020 institutional ranking, we are one of the top 10 institutions in the country, and we are one of the top 550 institutions out of 9,000 institutions evaluated, where the evaluation is done in terms of how the science is benefiting, how the intellectual property is benefiting both the society and industry. So with this end note, I just wanted to leave a message that collaboration is key, and science is no exception. And in fact, I believe in science, it is all the more necessity. So we always have to basically work on the quadrant, which are intersection of not you win or they win. It should be we win, should be the mantra that we should be taking it up in science for the larger gains of the, the humankind. With this, I mean, since I've been told that many students would be participating in it, I would encourage and welcome the students at different stages of their careers, or young researchers who wants to pursue kind of a high-end research on several of these domains that we have been working for a purpose. You're welcome to join this institute, and then together we basically create a kind of a new fortes of new discoveries in the years and decades to come. Thank you very much for your time, and I take this opportunity to thank the Gujarat Technological University, and in particular the Honorable Vice Chancellor and Amit for providing this opportunity to share some of our thoughts and some of our happenings on this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your wonderful knowledge. It is a very informative session. It's been a pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Participants, anyone having any questions, they can drop their questions in chat box. Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Sure. Thank you, Devarshi.
Thank you. Now we have a lunch break of half an hour. So we will start this session, next session by 2:30. We will start the session by 2:30, so I will kindly request all the participants to join by 2:30. The topic for the next session, we have two other speakers, Dr. Pankaj Bansal and Shri Amitabh Mishra. Okay, thank you.